What descriptions occupy your mind when I say utility company? For example, common thoughts could come up with the words boring or necessary. Would suggesting descriptions such as polarizing or pop culture surprise you? That's the feeling I found in myself. The story behind these descriptions are why Pacific Gas and Electric have all the ingredients for a great episode. A utility giant in size, matching its ambitions for a sustainable future, set against a backdrop of glaring shortcomings. After you learn PG&E's story, I think you'll agree with me. And from now on, we're going to call Pacific Gas and Electric PG&E for the ease of use. One of the largest utility operations happening in the heart of San Francisco, reliably producing, distributing, and serving gas and electric coast to coast, and nearly head to toe in California. That's PG&E. Need utility service? PG&E provides that in 46 of 58 counties. So seeing their name everywhere is not surprising. It comes with the territory of spearheading a future for green energy and creating climate change solutions. The rewards are grand too. In 2017, they amassed $17 billion in revenue from a massive customer base of 16 million people for a hefty $2 billion in income. And yet, PG&E finds itself treading in the dark shadows of sky-high liability claims. If news of the harrowing California wildfires have made it to your earbuds, then it's clear how frightful a situation PG&E and the state find themselves in. Before moving through that, let's discover how this behemoth utility was born. Dating back 1852, people are rushing to strike big riches in the California gold rush. Yet two separate parties have their eyes set on different paths to success. The Donahue brothers formed San Francisco Gas Company this year, supplying the influx of migrants with the luxury of gas-lit streetlights. And what a success it was for the brothers. This is one of the early threads that weave together PG&E's existence. As San Francisco Gas Company is thriving and expanding, during this exciting time, the second thread of PG&E's existence can be traced back to the 1890s, when two pioneers of energy, John Martin and Eugene DeSable Jr., I hope I'm saying that right, were selling hydroelectric power to run the bustling gold mining operations of northern Sacramento. As the two separate companies enjoyed distinct success in distinct areas, ideas of merging started to make more sense as a complementary strategy. Thus, in 1905, San Francisco Gas and Electric combined with California Gas and Electric. With the two threads securely tied together now, Pacific Gas and Electric was born, serving and thriving and being recognized as the dominant player of the California grid. Shocking events occurred following the birth of PG&E. The year was 1906. A terrible earthquake crumbled San Francisco. Widespread destruction and fires shook the people and the city to its core. PG&E and its peers suffered crippling infrastructure losses. But being the dominant figure has its many silver linings. This earthquake actually strengthened PG&E's hold on the grid. Would you believe that? As other utilities burned holes in their pocketbooks, scrambling to recover, PG&E had the blessing of the big New York bankers and was able to use this calamity as an opportunity to strengthen its power. No pun intended. And through timely acquisitions and consolidations in the utility, they became the market leader. By this point, the company was serving a hefty 1/3 of all Californians and was beloved by most. Jumping way ahead to the 1960s, it was a decade all about breaking ground and breaking stereotypes. Enjoying continued success, PG&E brought the first privately operated nuclear plant to the USA, Vallecitos Nuclear Center, creating cleaner, cheaper energy for their PG&E customers. But the company wasn't done. This time they shattered the stereotype of boring utilities when they invaded pop culture after a Bay Area band donned their name and even featured a PG&E power plant on their popular album cover. So you see, I wasn't only shocking you for attention when mentioning PG&E was pop culture. Okay? Now, has anyone heard of this band before? I was really surprised to learn about this. Do you like their music? Let me know in the comments below. PG&E's success was increasing in step with their growing service territory, but quietly seeds of misfortune were being planted. Slowly and steadily, mistakes were replacing their identity amongst the community. More and more, PG&E was thought of as clumsy, then negligent, possibly incompetent, finally lazy and greedy. Bad public perception, as PG&E discovered, is a hard stain to wash off. Going over this grocery list of mistakes will show you how PG&E got to where it is today. Number 1 on the list, Hinkley groundwater contamination. For the long years of 1952 to 1966, PG&E pumped and dumped 370 million gallons of chromium-6 wastewater into the ponds of Hinkley, California. I hear you now like the birds chirping outside my window. What's chromium-6? It's a chemical compound widely used for preventing corrosion in gas compression sites. The awful news wasn't that PG&E was using chromium-6, but disposing it recklessly in unlined ponds. PG&E kept concealing this for an excruciatingly long 35 years. In 1987, the local board of Hinkley was informed of the present dangers laying under its people. Settling for the largest direct action lawsuit and inspiring future Oscar winners, this disaster shifted the good standing of PG&E. Hinkley successfully sued PG&E for a whopping $333 million, which was later featured in the shocking and hope-inspiring story of an Oscar-winning movie, Erin Brockovich. Now, my question for you is, which was more damaging to PG&E, the huge lawsuit or the hit Hollywood movie? Let me know below. I'd love to hear about it. Second on the list is Diablo Canyon. Designed and constructed a nuclear plant atop the infamous San Andreas fault line. Thankfully, no disasters have been recorded officially, but in the opinion of many, PG&E and the state showed extreme deficits of foresight by increasing risk of surrounding communities and the environment. Fortunately, the facility is shuttering operations in early 2025. Next up, Sierra Blaze. This wildfire showed the strong turn of state sentiment against PG&E. This incident aroused an astounding 739 counts of criminal negligence for failing to manage trees nearby power lines. PG&E was now holding the first place trophy for the biggest criminal conviction in state history. If that's a thing, of course. Their slide into demise continued. Now, number 4 on the list is the San Bruno explosion. It's September 9th, 2010, in a neighborhood of San Bruno. Screams and blasts rang out as 3,000 pounds of warped steel flew through the air. A PG&E gas pipe measuring 28 feet and 20 inches in diameter tore apart. When the chaos finally calmed, 8 body bags were taken off, over 60 injuries tended to, and hundreds of real estate builders demanded. The cratered and scorched grounds resembled more of a battlefield than a place where families were raised. The blast rocked the neighborhood strongly enough that seismologists rated it a 1.1 magnitude. PG&E was heavily criticized for brutally neglecting standards as it continued to defer maintenance on a pipe that was, well, more fit for a museum display than modern-day service. Prosecutors levied heated arguments against PG&E, and once the ink dried, the company was convinced of 12 felonies and could only watch regretfully as officials stuffed their money bags to the tune of $2 billion in penalties. Now, moving on, and sadly growing in severity, are the 2017 Northern California fires. 7 short years after the disaster at San Bruno, Northern California is sweating for their lives as a devastating fire roars unchained. The recipe for this is being attributed to record droughts, sweeping winds, invasion of bark beetles, and PG&E's failure to successfully manage its system. Responsibility weighs heavily on the shoulders of PG&E for the following fires in Mendocino, Lake, Butte, Sonoma, Humboldt, Napa, and Yuba County. The cost of devastation plus wildfire risk equal an unsustainable future for PG&E. A law unknown by most, but one you're going to want to understand for the importance of the story, is inverse condemnation. Means when a utility is wholly responsible for damaging property where its equipment operates, even if they managed equipment to the fullest extent of the law, it means PG&E is on the hook to pay all the damages to the victims. Now, taking care of victims is a universally good standard. But in essence now, PG&E has become the insurer of last resort when it comes to wildfires. With changing and harsher climates surfacing in California, it's paradoxical to hold utilities 100% responsible for changes outside their control. Do you agree? Tell me about it. After these fires, the liability claims climbed high as $15 billion. Wow. And finally, and the most recent in 2018 was the Cant't fire. On the heels of California politicians passing legislation aimed at relieving a state crisis deemed to be bearing PG&E and the Green Initiative, a tinder was growing into another haunting experience for the people of Butte County. The day is November 8th, 2018, and the deadliest state wildfire is testing the mettle of PG&E and the state. The fire is jolting through bone-dry vegetation and consuming trees at an alarming rate. The wildfire robbed 85 people of their lives, sent investigators searching for at least 3 more, and the structure of an entire city was reduced to mere ashes. PG&E is hustling to the safeguards of the courts, where it is organizing their crushing debt loads and astronomical fire claims through Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Experts are saying damages could cost in excess of $16 billion. Totaling PG&E's tab to about $31 billion. I wish I had that kind of money. Unless California intentionally wants the candle industry to thrive, it seems they need a statewide solution as well as an industry-wide solution to tackle this growing problem. Buried deep in California's history, serving as the sturdy backbone and the lifeblood for great portions of this successful state, people admired PG&E. For the first half of a century, no equals presented themselves, and no utility quite invaded pop culture like PG&E. However, the back half of this century painted a gloomy image in the minds of the collective. From poisoning a town's groundwater to playing the antagonist in a Hollywood film, with hesitations that leveled neighborhoods to nothing but dust and ash. The last 5 decades dented their glossy, lovable image. Now, pushing and carrying California in the war on climate change, they are revolutionizing to a smart grid and making industry-leading commitments to green energy. Finding my feeling on PG&E is like a game of tug and war. Negligence and corporate greed make me root for their demise, while the fate of urgently ushering in a nationwide green energy standard and providing reliable service has me hopeful PG&E can come through this. I believe they are better fit than a government entity to manage the grid. I've identified 3 factors that put the company and the state in the poor position they find themselves in today. Number 1, California has been exposed to PG&E's negligence too much for comfort. Skyrocketing safety risks combined with increased wildfire probabilities have got PG&E caught red-handed, in my opinion. Too many times we've heard the words delaying, stalling, postponing. All seem to be common maintenance orders from PG&E. Postponing maintenance on power lines near Cant't fire for an unforgivably long 6 years. Still to this day, crews haven't taken their tools out to these heavily scrutinized power lines. Most fingers point the blame at PG&E as laborious investigations search through any clues lucky enough to be spared by this devil of a fire. Factor 2, a changing climate is sweeping over California, bringing longer, drier, and hotter summers married with wet winters, which are fueling the growth of widespread vegetation and trees. This increased growth is creating conflicts with the new hot, windy weather. Loaded with more trees than ever in recent history, California is a modern-day matchbox. With drought sweeping the state, it has resulted in 129 million dead trees, making for a threat ominous as any. The new types of fires Californians are faced with are frantic and spontaneous. Fed by dry chaparral and driven by fierce Santa Ana winds, fires are capable of devastation in hours now, no longer relegated to days or weeks to inflict its punishment. And factor 3, extreme regulations and imposing restrictions on the logging industry enjoyed popular support. But was the California government making unintended consequences later down the road? It sure seems so now. With trees suffocating the natural landscape, California finds itself surrounded in lush forestry, which is causing problems as this reality is paired with a new era of climate change. Now, what I want you to do is put your actor's cap on by imagining you're a California politician. What moves would you be making? Should the state let them dissolve? Can California run a utility as efficient or better than PG&E under these circumstances? Do they even want the fire liability risk that come with the job? Should they save PG&E? What are the good reasons for that, in your opinion? With all the political ramifications, the customers, the victims, and future investment prospects for the state, a lot is on the line. Let me know how you feel about this pressing situation. In my heart, it goes out to the victims of these California wildfires. Bless you. I know I'm happy this isn't my mess to fix, and I wish you the best of luck, California.